Hi everybody and welcome. I'm Eileen Drolette, the Workforce Development Coordinator with the Boulder Chamber, and today the Boulder Chamber and Workforce Boulder County have teamed up to bring you the Pathways to Success Career Exploration Series. The goal of this series is to give high schoolers and young adults um, a greater perspective on what it's like to be a working professional in Colorado's top industries. And I'll start off with a few introductions of our panelists, and then we'll get started. On today's transportation industry panel, first up we have joining us Amy Thompson. Amy is a program coordinator with the Boulder Valley School District, specializing in health and wellness programming for students. Over the past 8 years working with the school district, she has leveraged her expertise in program development, event coordination, and operational management to deliver impactful district-wide initiatives. In her current role, Amy coordinates the Safe Routes to School program, overseeing events such as Bike Week, Walk to School Day, bike rodeos, and the Blast and Bikeology bicycle education programs. Through her leadership, school participation in Walk to School Day has grown by 50%, and Bike Week has exceeded its goal of 3,000 registered riders. Amy also holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Missouri-Columbia. And next up, we have Natalie Stiffler. Natalie is a transportation leader with over 15 years of experience in transit, planning, and mobility. She currently serves as the Senior Vice President and Colorado Transportation Lead at WSP, working with agencies across the state to grow and improve transportation systems. Previously, she led the City of Boulder's Transportation and Mobility Department, guiding implementation of mobility plans, including the Comprehensive Transportation Master Plan and Airport Master Plan. Natalie holds a BA in Urban Studies and Planning from the University of California, San Diego, as well as a master's in City and Regional Planning and a master's in Engineering from California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo. Thank you both for being here today. I'd love to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself as well. So without further ado, tell us about yourself and your background leading up to your current career. And Amy, I'll have you go first.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Amy Thompson, and I'm the Safe Routes to School Program Coordinator for the Boulder Valley School District. And you probably wonder, what does that mean? So what that means is we've got about 5,000 of our 27,000 kids taking the school bus to school. So I put together resources for the other 22,000 kids. So things like biking and walking programs, carpools, using RTD, that kind of stuff. So that's what I focus on for the Boulder Valley School District. But I will say I took a non-traditional path to get here. My background is in business, and I started my career in commercial and residential real estate consulting and appraisal. And I did that for a long time and thought it was super fun. Then I took some time off to be a stay-at-home mom. So I did that for several years and just started volunteering at our local elementary school in Safe Routes to School, and really enjoyed it, really loved the time biking and walking with my own kids. And the program that we built at Heatherwood Elementary, we tripled the amount of kids biking and walking to school, and we got all this national attention. We got national awards. And as I thought to myself and thought about returning to work, I'm like, no one was giving me national awards when I was in real estate. And so I decided to switch paths. And so I decided to apply at the school district and work on health and wellness programs for children. So that's kind of my path.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
Natalie, how about you?
That's great. It's fun to hear about. I've known Amy for a little while, so it's fun to hear about that path. So I, as you heard, I am with WSP. I'm the transportation leader for Colorado currently, and my current role is helping grow our business, the WSP business here in Colorado for transportation. And WSP is it is the biggest engineering firm in the world. We have about 70,000 employees globally, and about 30,000 in the United States. And so it's a really fun place to work because you kind of meet new people and learn new things about how we build projects and design projects for the built environment across every sector that I never even knew existed. So I'm really enjoying it, and I'll talk more about that as we get further into the questions. But before coming to the private sector, this is my first time in the private sector. I've actually been with WSP now for a year, And before coming to the private sector, I worked for the public side all of my career. I started at a small transit agency called Lane Transit District in Eugene, Oregon. And then I worked for a very big metropolitan planning organization in San Diego called SANDAG. And then I came out here to be closer to my other parent or my kid's other parent's family, and start a family, start having kids and raising kids out here. So I came out, started working for the city of Boulder. I worked for Boulder for about 10 years altogether. I had a brief stint away to work for Via Mobility Services. And my passion has always been public transportation and transit. And so I had an opportunity to join Via and help deliver their operations across Boulder and the Denver metro area, serving both fixed route public transportation service, but also on-demand services for people with disabilities and low-income folks. So, and then I went back to the city and eventually was the transportation director, and then made the switch to the private side. And I'll talk a little bit more about kind of why I decided to make that move. But yeah, hopefully that kind of gives you a sense of my background.
Beautiful. And Natalie, was the path to your career, was there anything in there that surprised you? You mentioned kind of you've known your passion has always been transit, but kind of within that path, what's been surprising to you?
Yeah, I definitely think, what's surprising, and I'm sure Amy probably like you would see this too, it's you kind of have to like continually sort of carve out what like the opportunities that present themselves and then like find within that, what's going to be fulfilling for you, or what potentially is going to lead to the next thing that you want to do. It's a little bit of like a strategy, I think, at times of because the thing, and I try to always tell myself this and tell my friends and family and colleagues, it's like there's no perfect job, right? Like every job has its ups and downs, and you also have to kind of always remember like the grass isn't greener because it's easy to be like, oh, I should go do that. That'll be much better. But every job has its ups and downs. And so I think that's kind of been as I've grown in my career and just, grown in age and maturity, I think that's kind of what has uncovered itself for me, is that you kind of got to make the most of what opportunities are in front of you. And sometimes it means like, and we can talk more about this too, but like taking kind of weird paths, like why would I leave the public sector when, things were pretty great. Like I didn't have a real reason to leave other than like, oh, this seemed interesting and there was something new to learn. Right. And like trying not to like worry about what other people are going to think about that. And, just constantly trying to like check back in with yourself if this is the right thing for you and for the time of your life. As Amy said, like there was a point at which she went to take care of her kids and her family. Right. Like, and a lot of, I was thinking about this conversation today. It's like a lot of the decisions I've made around my career are influenced by my 3 daughters and like the ages that they are and what I think, what I can handle in life at that moment with them. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Amy, what about you? Was the path to your career what you expected it to be? And if so, what ways did the journey surprise you?
Clearly not. So I'm in a job that was very different than what I studied in college, but I'm happy to, where this journey has taken me. And I have found that it's very fulfilling to do work that really serves the community and serves families and children. I find that really fulfilling. So that's one thing I'm really happy to be with the school district and just working on projects that really impact the day-to-day life and safety for families.
Awesome. And Amy, could you walk us through a day in your life? I know you've talked about all of the different programs you help run, like bike to work and
Mhm.
or bike to school, walk to school, bike rodeos. Tell us what does that entail? What does a day in your life look like?
Yeah, the one thing I really love about this job is almost like comical in how much variety of tasks that I can do in a day. And today I rushed over here from Louisville Middle. I was teaching, co-teaching middle school kids bike skills and telling some middle school seventh graders to stop doing wheelies in the road. So it's anything from like education's a big part of my job. So we do outreach at schools. That could be writing articles for parents, like about e-bike safety, training crossing guards at schools, things like that. I work with engineer folks like Natalie to work on infrastructure improvements around schools, like enhancing crosswalks and putting in the school zone flashers and things like that. I work with local police. To do, again, educational outreach for families, and then also just enforcement and getting people to slow down in our school zones. And then encouragement, those fun activities like bike to school day, walk to school day, just getting people kind of excited. We also have an ongoing program called Trip Tracker where kids can earn rewards for biking and walking to school. So it's those things that just, well, some people are just love those, points systems and gets them excited to bike and walk. And then there's just a lot of communications in my job, whether it's doing a presentation to the Board of Education, writing articles, maintaining our website, serving on various committees for our municipal and county partners, and even within the school district, our sustainability committee. So my job, my day can be all over the place.
And just as a quick follow-up, what do you typically find the most rewarding? And then on the flip side, what kind of problems or challenges do you run up against in your work?
The most rewarding is like when something clicks for a kid and suddenly they can ride a bike, or suddenly they have a sense of independence that makes them, I don't know, feel like it just elevates their self-worth. They're away from screens and outside, getting sunshine and wind in their face. I think those are the magical moments. And even though we live in Boulder County, which is an extremely bike-centric community, every school I visit, there are kids that don't know how to ride. So teaching them is just so fulfilling. So on the flip side, the hard stuff, it's a terrible day when I get news of a kid who's been involved in a crash in some way and hurt. That's always just get a pit in my stomach feeling, but it motivates me to work hard to make changes, whether through education or infrastructure. And then grumpy parents, I would say, would be the second thing. Those are the challenging things.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
And Natalie, how about you? Walk us through a day in your life at your job. And also, what do you tend to find the most rewarding and what challenges do you run up against? And you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I think, I mentioned in this role, I'm growing a business, a transportation business here in Colorado for WSB. And what that means is we have about over 800 employees here in Colorado, kind of covering all sectors of the built environment. And a portion of those folks are focused on building transportation projects, bridges, roadways, multimodal projects, rail, mountain rail, passenger rail projects. And our clients are CDOT, RTD, City and County of Denver, and then a lot of the other cities kind of up and down the Front Range, and Dr. Cog, of course. And so my days are largely meeting with people. I spend a lot of time talking to people. My partner, I always am like, I'm so tired of talking at the end of the day because that's what I do all day long. And it's great. I love it. Like I feel like it's kind of like what I'm meant to do, and also I'm exhausted by it. So yeah, I'm very external facing, but also internal facing from a staff perspective. And like the most kind of rewarding, I was thinking about this recently in the year, like reflecting on the last year, and like the most rewarding thing is to hear from my team that they feel, better supported and that they feel like they're meeting their goals. Because so many folks want to help communities like Boulder Valley, right, have safer streets and have robust transit services and world-class bike lanes and all of those things. And the folks that work here, that's their job. That's what they want to be doing in the communities that they live in too, right? It's one thing to build a bike lane in Seattle, Washington, when you don't live in it, right? And your friends and your family aren't going to be using it. It's another thing to get to do it in the community that you live in. So it's very fulfilling for me to see our like growth in the market here and being able to help the communities that we're living in, because ultimately I'm a public servant at heart, and so that's like what I want to be doing, is serving the communities that I'm living in and working in, and that's what the folks that work for WSP want to be doing too, the folks on my team. So that's like the best part about my day, is helping just uplift the team, making sure that they're getting what they need. And that obviously can look like so many different things, right? Like it's, having those hard conversations around performance, or, making sure that they're being recognized when they're doing good work, or celebrating them. How can we think about how we celebrate our employees and our staff? And then the other side of it is like, I'm out with the clients and checking in on how things are going, and seeing where there's opportunities to help in their communities. So it's just like Amy, I think every day is very different. But it's most of the time just a lot of talking to people.
Beautiful. And that kind of segues a little bit into kind of our next section, where I'd love to kind of focus on the impact of the work you're doing. But just to kind of start off with a fun hypothetical, I did want to ask, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how transportation works today, what would it be and why? And Natalie, I'll have you go first.
Oh yeah, I thought you were gonna ask Amy first. Well, gosh, I mean, it's so hard, just one thing. So I think I would probably say safety and affordability are the two things that are often on my mind, especially here in the Denver metro area. It's a very expensive place to live, and there are a lot of deaths on our roads across the state every year, and so there's so much to be done in those buckets, and I think there's just the pure options and access that need to be improved to address affordability. And then on the safety side, there's so much from a design standpoint, but also enforcement and of course education, as Amy mentioned. So I know that's like not really a magic wand answer, because there's like so much within all of that has to be addressed, but I think those are the two buckets. And we can certainly dive more into that if you want, but I'll let Amy speak to it too.
Awesome. Yeah, Amy, how about you?
Yeah, so if I could wave a magic wand, I would make the dream of Vision Zero come true. So that is the vision that there won't be any deaths or very serious bodily injury crashes on our roads. And when I think about that, I think about mindfulness. We have so many drivers out there who are trying to multitask and rush to work and do things while they're driving. And if everyone could just be mindful about the choices they're making when they're driving their car, or even when they're biking, when they're walking, I think we can come close to achieving that. So I guess that would be my wish, is just the mindfulness that would bring about Vision Zero.
Awesome. And I guess that kind of leads us into our next question. So, how does the work that you're doing, and the people like you work with in the transportation industry, how does the work you're doing there impact the community or the environment in ways most people might not even realize? And Amy, I'll have you go first.
So yeah, I think some people don't realize, kind of like Natalie said, this is an expensive area, and transportation itself is expensive. And every time we start a bus route. Every bus route is a teacher's salary and benefits. So it's weighing those kind of resources. And so, most people live within 2 miles of their school. So if we can, channel that kind of energy, walk to school, get all those benefits, and the benefits, it's not only for the environment, but it's great for kids and adults' bodies to get a little exercise before the day. It's so good for mental health. And I think one of the really surprising things about safe routes to school and biking and walking is the sense of community that it brings about. When you're in a car, you're just so enclosed and in your own space and often like spacing out. And when you're out biking and walking, you're taking in the community and what's in your neighborhood, and you're connecting with people. You're saying, hi, oh, that person's out in their yard every day. So I think one of the hidden benefits is really that community building.
Amazing. Natalie, how about you?
Yeah, I think I love all of what Amy just said. I was thinking about it from the standpoint around cost as well, the work, the transportation system that we desire to have, and that a lot of communities already are, have already built. It costs a lot of money to deliver that system. And this isn't unique to, our communities or in Colorado. It's kind of a nationwide issue that we're facing. And I think it's I guess it's just not obvious to people around how we're paying for our transportation system. And the challenge with that is then being able to kind of get buy-in and get support to maintain a system and to improve a system that already exists. And so that's actually as I mentioned at WSP, we kind of cover all parts of from planning to engineering. And we also do what's called kind of like the program side of things. So really trying to help communities understand the funding and financing around projects. And so much of that also then goes into the public realm and working with community members and stakeholders to understand what tools are available to be able to improve a system or take care of a system. So that's been on my mind a lot. I don't know if it's because of election season or budget season or like all of those things, but that we I think have a real challenge in front of us from that standpoint around, especially in this state with Tabor restrictions and which is probably a whole other series of conversations, but that we're going to have to, and it impacts not only transportation, right? It impacts education and human services, and for a state like Colorado that just continues to grow, to be able to meet the needs of everybody in our communities, we're going to have to face that challenge at some point soon.
Yeah, and I think you're talking a lot about kind of the community buy-in and then engaging all of these stakeholders and coming together as a community. So I'm wondering if both of you could kind of elaborate even a little bit further on what does that typically entail? What is that process or building buy-in from the community members and working with to engage the community members? What does that process entail? What is your work in there, and then what does the work kind of with all of the other public partners and private partners look like? And Amy, I'll have you start off.
Yeah, I'm really, an important part of my job is engaging with families and trying to like understand their like daily lived experience. And I've found that that's best done by going where they are. So whether it's at drop off or pickup after school or community events, fall festivals, going out there with maps and pictures and really trying to get their perspective on what are their successes and challenges in getting their kids to school safely, and how it impacts their family. It takes time and money away from family life, sometimes getting kids to school and to all of their activities. So really kind of trying to do a deep dive and really like I'm one person. Our school district is 500 square miles, so I can't know every nook and cranny of our area. So really talking to families and just getting to see where the concerns are out there is a big tool for engaging. And then that trip tracker survey that I put out every month, how did you get to school, that where families, kids can earn rewards. I have this magic question at the end saying, tell me about your commute to school. And that's like the gold mine for me, where I get information. It's an easy way for people to communicate with me and tell me about not only challenges, but successes. I've got one girl at Fairview High School who she takes the RTD every day from Broomfield to go to Fairview High School, and she gets on 2 to 3 buses a day. It's really, she types it out every month, and I'm so impressed the way that she is using public transportation to expand her educational opportunities. So this is just a little taste of some of the ways that I get to hear from families.
Awesome. Sounds like a lot of like gathering data, and yeah, trying to kind of go out into the community, and find the best way to understand where people are.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I kind of turn that information around, and then Boulder Valley School District, I think we're 9 municipalities in 3 counties. Boulder, Broomfield, and a little sliver of Gilpin. And so then I can meet with engineers and policymakers and kind of share that information with those decision makers, so that can help frame some of their priorities.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. And Natalie, how about you?
Yeah, well, I think Amy covered a couple of the most important pieces around engagement. I think the only other thing I would add is, just the early engagement, engaging with community members and stakeholders really early on as you start a process, or before you even start it, right? That this is coming, and this is what the engagement's going to look like, and also being super clear. That was one thing that I think the city of Boulder did really well when I worked there. And I know a lot of communities are kind of doing the same type of practice of just being really clear about where that particular engagement opportunity falls, whether it's going to be a high level of engagement and hearing, I think, and I'm not an expert, but I think collaboration and participation are the kind of higher end of the spectrum of engagement, and then versus the other end, where it's more about just informing folks on what's going to be happening, and being very clear about what it is that you're committing to in an engagement process with the community, so there's no surprises, and then helping them understand where they've been heard, and why maybe certain decisions were made that they didn't necessarily agree with. So Boulder is probably one of the most challenging communities to do community engagement in. And so if you've practiced community engagement in that community, you have done the gold level standard, and anywhere else is going to be a walk in the park. But I'll say, because I'm working with communities across the state, it's becoming, what Boulder has done is kind of becoming the common practice across many of the communities in the state of Colorado. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
And then kind of lastly, focusing on sort of the impact of your work in transportation, because you intersect with so many people's lives all the time, I did want to ask you both, how does your work consider equity and accessibility to make sure transportation works for everybody? And Amy, how about you?
One thing, a part of my job is working with RTD, and I was just so thrilled 2 years ago when they introduced the Zero Fare for Youth program. That has just been such a gift to all families, because when kids can get themselves to school, with RTD, that saves families time and money, but in particular, some of our most vulnerable communities, and really advocating for that good RTD service. And that can just really free up time. Like some of our most vulnerable families, they might have parents who are service industry workers. Maybe they have to report to a hotel or something to work at 4 a.m, and they're not around to take their kids to school. So having that option has been great. Also, our voters in Boulder County have been generous with all of the bonds that we've put out for the public to consider, and they've approved them. And so we've been able to improve schools and, make sure accessibility is better, whether it's on playgrounds or just ramps getting in and out of the school. So that's been really great. And I think also, since I do have a relationship with the counties, the 3 counties and the 9 municipalities, one thing I can do is advocate for communities who don't have the time and wherewithal to advocate. Sometimes it can happen that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and maybe some of the more affluent communities, they get the enhanced crosswalk or some of the improvements. And so I've got a platform where I can advocate for some of the areas in our community with have high concentrations of kids on free and reduced lunch benefits. And I know, like, oh boy, some infrastructure projects around those neighborhoods would be so valuable.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. Natalie, how about you? How does the work you're doing consider equity and accessibility to make sure transportation works for everybody?
Yeah, we definitely, I think those two kind of themes come across in every project that we do, from a transportation standpoint. I also think of it, with our staff, our employees. We have, this is really top of mind for me because I was just there, but we operate all the back office customer service for E470, all the toll lanes, the E470 toll lanes. WSP has a couple hundred employees that provide that customer service and back office support for the toll. And most of those folks are minimum wage workers, right? And so it's so critical, to be able for them to get to work in a way that, that they can do it without having to take from their food budget that month, or right. Like it's that, I would say, just vulnerable. And so from an employer standpoint, I think we think about it. And then also, how do we help advocate for options for our employees to get to work? I think the chamber and BTC knows this well, right? Like helping your employees find solutions so that they can feed their family and also get to their job on time. And I think it's easy to forget about folks that are experiencing those challenges day in and day out. So that I think it's meaningful to work for an employer that is thinking about that for their employees, and also is able to hopefully be building, transportation systems and communities that are addressing those issues as well. Because so much of transportation is beyond just the road. Like it's so much about the land use and where the jobs are and where the residents are, and trying to. We were talking about how for a lot of the folks, the development that's happening out east, near Aurora is really good for the folks that are working for E470, because now they can actually live somewhere close to their job. And, I think the whole state kind of has the job and housing issues. And that it contributes to the equity and accessibility concerns that we all have. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. And thank you both for kind of highlighting all of the different impacts that kind of transportation kind of touches in people's lives. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit into what advice you would have for a high schooler or young professional interested in joining this industry. So I think first off, I'd love to hear if you could kind of describe what key skills or education requirements would you like to highlight for entry roles in this industry? And Amy, how about you first?
Yeah, so if I were giving advice to a young person starting out, well, number one, I would say just try a little bit of everything. Don't specialize too soon. So look for internships or even jobs and just try a wide variety of things. And for what I do, programs like You can have kind of almost any background education wise. The skills it takes is just communication skills, organizing skills, that kind of stuff, creativity. But yeah, I would just encourage kids to be like open to different possibilities and just try as many things. There's probably jobs out there you've never heard of in your life that could suit you really, really well.
Thanks, Amy. How about you, Natalie?
Yeah, I totally agree. Trying like just going for, something that sounds interesting, and if it's not, you go on to the next thing. I think from a skills standpoint, for there in the transportation industry, it's such a broad, I think we've talked about I was thinking about in just, this half hour, we've probably talked about like 20 different jobs within the industry, right? Like there's planning, there's program management type work that Amy does, there's engineering, all kinds of different engineering. There's like very specific modeling and GIS analysis and data analytics and landscape architecture. There's so much in the transportation industry, and there's so many different, working for a school district or working for the private side or working for a municipality. There's so many different avenues that you can take too. So I think that's what's really cool about it, right? And a lot of folks that I know, like they may start, and this is both on the public side and on the private side with a consultant, you may start in land use and eventually end up in transportation, or working in housing and community development and end up in transportation, or vice versa, right? Like I think because so many of the skill sets, as Amy talked about, like are what you're going to be doing every day, require the same thing, taking initiative, communication, presenting information, problem solving, strategy, right? Like all those things, the skills can be used throughout all these areas. So yeah, I think just going for trying different things and turning at different places, and then a big piece is building relationships, meaningful relationships at each of those places, right? Because you never know when you might want to come back to that employer, even if it's 10 years later in your career, right? And they're like, you were an intern, you were amazing, or you will work for somebody that works for them, or, so the relationships piece, I think that is probably one of the most important parts of the skill set of, as you kind of progress and move into your career, focusing on building relationships with people is probably, I would say, like in the top 3 of things to prioritize.
Awesome. And Natalie, how do you see the industry changing in the coming years? Is there anything, if I were a young professional looking to get into transportation, for instance, are there skills that might be important to have kind of looking ahead to the future?
Yeah, I think there's going to be continue to be a real push or interest in the innovation and technology space. And AI would fall into that bucket, right? There's going to be a lot of interest, not only in kind of using AI in like an efficiency sense of the work that we do, but also in the like modeling and safety side of the work, like the technology side of being able to recognize when people are speeding on our roadways, and all the cameras and hardware and everything so that's another piece we didn't even get to right today, is like there's a whole kind of IT piece of transportation that is kind of mind-blowing. Like I feel like I'm like just kind of learning about it all because it's still relatively new, right? And you see it out on our systems. CDOT's put cameras out on 119, and that's, I think, going to be a big part of our future around safety, which I fully support, because we can't have a police vehicle or Colorado State Patrol vehicle sitting out on every segment of our roads, right? And so to be able to enforce speed limits, I think that's super important. So technology and innovation, I think, is going to be a huge piece of our future in transportation. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Natalie. And then Amy, what's your perspective on how where the industry is going?
I could not agree with Natalie more. I think it's technology, and I got the chance to travel to DC and sit in on a meeting with Pete Buttigieg at a big committee, and he said the number one change in transportation has been the cell phone. That's been the kind of the biggest impactful technology, but I'm seeing it every day at schools. E-bikes are everywhere. They're both a blessing and a headache for me, but kids are getting themselves to school, and it's this emerging technology that we're constantly trying to keep up with. I'm excited about the automated enforcement that Natalie talked about, because I think it will help make our roads safer, and it takes bias out of traffic stops. It's safer for police officers. So I'm excited about that. And I'm looking for, I'm sure very soon a driverless car is going to end up in our hug and go. And so I think that that is going to be a big change. So I just technology, and it's just going to be a huge part of transportation, and having that skill set will be super valuable for young people trying to get into this industry.
Awesome. And Amy, Natalie touched on this a little bit on the kind of variety of pathways that is available in transportation, but do you have anything to kind of add on as well in terms of what are the like all of the different kind of branches that somebody looking to go into transportation could could decide to go into?
Oh my gosh, I think of just all the people that I get to collaborate with, like within the district. I'm working with educators, I'm working with principals on their traffic flow. I think you can go into planning at the school district level. You can become a planner or an engineer for a city or a county. There's all the technology. Planning a public transit system like RTD, or like the ski buses up in the mountains. Gosh, it's endless, and there's always a need for transportation, and there's going to be constant change in that industry. It's such a big part of people's lives, and I think with young people, I really admire that focus on climate literacy and climate change, and I think the next generation is going to really help us solve kind of the hole that we've gotten into with that. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for all the insight you provided today. I have one last question, which is going to be if you're kind of thinking about, how you got to where you are in your career and everything that you've learned, is there any last kind of pieces of wisdom or advice that you'd like to impart on somebody just starting off? And Natalie, how about you?
I think I already talked about both of these things, but I think the two things I wrote down are in our relationships and risks. So building relationships and taking risks, I think would be my two to take forward.
Awesome. Amy, what about you?
I'm going to build on something that Natalie said, and that's, every job has its ups and downs. It has its like big wins and like, crushing defeats. But if you can align with what you truly value, like, more than like the money you're earning or whatever, but if it aligns with your core values, whether it's like environmental or social justice, that's the way to like really like stay motivated in your career and to truly make a difference. Like, you can never change the world in a month. It takes a lot of tenacity, a lot of grit, and just a lot of like sticking with things for a long time. And so when it aligns with your core values, that is very motivating.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today and providing really excellent insight and knowledge into careers in the transportation industry. You both have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you again.
Thanks, Eileen.
Yeah,
This was great.
Yeah, very cool.
Appreciate it.